There is growing global condemnation for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to take control of Gaza City. A new satellite image shows Israel's military is already building up its forces near the border of Gaza City, just a day after Israel's security cabinet approved the takeover plan. Joining me now to discuss is Max Boot. He is a senior fellow with the Council of Foreign Relations and a columnist for The Washington Post. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Well, it doesn't appear that Netanyahu has much support at home or internationally to conduct this operation. Even the IDF's chief of staff is warning Netanyahu in a meeting, according to a source, that a full takeover of Gaza would trap the military within the enclave and put the remaining hostages at risk. So why is he pushing forward on this?
I think the primary impetus is coming from Netanyahu's own cabinet, because this is what the hardliners, the far right and the Israeli government, they are demanding this as the price of continuing to support Netanyahu. And of course, without their support, he would fall from power. But this is a deeply misguided idea to send the IDF deep into the warrens of Gaza City with no plan for getting them out. There is no exit strategy. There is no end game. This is simply a recipe for an endless guerrilla war, which is exactly what Hamas wants. That's why the IDF leadership themselves, they don't want to do this, because they know this is going to trap their forces in this quagmire without any obvious way to leave. But Netanyahu is basically willing to sacrifice the lives of Palestinians as well as IDF soldiers to stay in power. It's deeply dismaying, and it's something that the United States should be speaking up about. Instead, I think President Trump is basically giving Netanyahu an implicit green light to go ahead.
And talking about Trump, he's taking a more hands-off approach, saying it's, quote, up to Israel whether to occupy the entire Gaza Strip. What does that reveal about the U.S.'s role in this conflict going forward?
I think it's pretty clear that Netanyahu has the upper hand in the Trump-Netanyahu relationship. You saw it earlier with the bombing of Iran, where Trump tried to dissuade Netanyahu. Netanyahu went ahead, and then Trump decided to join in. And I think now in Gaza, Trump has certainly expressed some unease about the starvation going on in Gaza. He's expressed concern about ending the war. But at the end of the day, he is not going to stop Netanyahu from doing what Netanyahu wants to do. And this is what Netanyahu wants to do. It again, I think, primarily for political imperatives, even though Israel is going to pay a heavy price, not only on the ground, but also in lost international support. I mean, just this week, you had Germany, one of Israel's staunchest supporters, saying they will stop exporting weapons to Israel that could be used in Gaza. That's an indication of the international backlash that this ill-conceived plan to take over Gaza City is sparking around the world.
Do you think that other countries will follow suit? I think that was a real eye-opening moment to see Germany, one of the staunchest supporters of Israel, saying, no more, we're not sending you equipment or arms if you're going to continue with this operation. Do you think other countries will follow suit?
Well, absolutely, but I think it's really the U.S. is the major player. Germany is the number 2 arms supplier, but the U.S. is number 1 by a large margin. If President Trump were to say, "Hey, we're not going to send more weapons to Israel unless you guys start to pull back in the Gaza Strip, make a deal with Hamas, and implement a strategy for a long-term governance plan with Arab support," I think that kind of pressure from the U.S. would be meaningful. But President Trump is not willing to use the levers that he has on Netanyahu. And so Netanyahu basically feels free to ignore what the international community is saying and to go ahead with this ill-conceived plan, which unfortunately will lead to more suffering and could very possibly lead to the deaths of the remaining 20 Israeli hostages.
And real quick here, we're running out of time. But Max, can you tell me, the IDF, it already controls 75% of Gaza. How significant is taking Gaza City in terms of actually changing the trajectory of this war?
I don't think it's going to change the trajectory of the war. I don't think it's going to lead to the destruction of Hamas. I don't think it's going to achieve any of Israel's objectives, but it will enmesh Israeli troops in more difficult block by block fighting. And it will put more of in fact, all of Gaza's population under Israeli control, and it will endanger the lives of Israeli hostages. I mean, more than the actual strategy for getting into Gaza, what I'm concerned about, there is no strategy for getting out. I mean, it's been a long time since this war started on October 7th, 2023. And in that whole time, Netanyahu has still not come up with a post-war plan. What is Israel's objective? And if you don't have an objective, you're guaranteed to fail. If you don't know how a realistic achievement that you're trying to get to, you're not going to get there. And I think that the consensus of the IDF is that the objective that Netanyahu has put out there, which is liberating all the hostages by force and destroying every remnant of Hamas, that's not a realistic military objective. They've already achieved the realistic objective, which is to prevent Hamas from carrying out another October 7th attack.
Yeah, and you've heard so much of the international community warning that this is going to take a human toll, a greater human toll, not just for Palestinians, but for these Israeli hostages. And as we heard from the IDF chief, even his own soldiers, he's worried about there as well. Max Boot, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Joining us now is CNN's Sebastian Shukla. Sebastian, what is the reaction internationally to this plan?
Yeah, good afternoon. It's been a vociferous condemnation from the international community towards Benjamin Netanyahu and the cabinet's plan to go into and launch this offensive into Gaza City. The Prime Minister yesterday began the day by talking to Fox News and saying that it seemed to be the intention of the Israeli government to occupy all of Gaza. And since then, though, he's managed or begun the process of rowing that back. I'm going to read you a tweet from Netanyahu last night, which said, "We are not going to occupy Gaza. We are going to free Gaza from Hamas." So that is a very clear change. Now, whether that is a change because of the condemnation or a change of rhetoric as a messaging about this new offensive that will take place remains unclear. But as you were alluding to, that satellite image, which we now have from the region, shows Israeli forces, some 100 plus vehicles mustering on the Gaza border at the crossing of Nahal Oz, which is just 2 miles away from Gaza City itself. So whether or not the condemnation has changed the mind, it will not change the mind of Prime Minister Netanyahu. The first phase of this 5-part operation to liberate Gaza City appears to be in the offing. We will wait to see exactly when that takes place. But as we have said, the condemnation has been broad and sweeping across the world, in particularly here in Europe. You know, France, Canada, Ireland, Germany in particular have been very, very clear that this is a red line for them. Germany in particular, so long a vociferous, ardent supporter of Israel, has said, we're not going to send any more weapons to you. And that follows hot on the heels of some comments earlier this year made by Chancellor Friedrich Merz, where he said he doesn't see what the accomplishment or what the final goal is here by Israel anymore. And the change in tone there is important because Germany has been for such a long time a steadfast supporter of Israel, obviously given the atrocities committed here against Jews during the Second World War. So it's a change of tone here, and a one that is now being echoed across Europe, where nations are falling in line to condemn this and in no uncertain terms.
Right, to see Germany, one of the staunchest supporters of Israel, to say, hey, we're not sending equipment, we're not sending arms for this purpose. I think that was an eye-opening moment for the international community. Sebastian Shukla, thank you.